Now, as y'all know, I love videos about Antarctica. I do. Conspiracy theory videos, ice wall videos, all kind of topics surrounding Antarctica, because I truly believe that is some stuff going on there that they don't want us to know about, right? So this video here is the first ever footage from beyond the ice wall of Antarctica terrified the whole world. Let's see what they're talking.
We view this as a way to really listen to the voice of the ice shelf and understand how it might be changing.
There are 7 continents in the world, and most of them are a wide range of terrains, areas, biodomes, geography, cultures, all via the people that live in them. However, when it comes to the 7th continent, which is Antarctica, it's something altogether more strange.
Recently, there have been a number of reports of pyramids, huge great pyramids in Antarctica.
After all, this is the only frozen continent on the planet, it's the only place without a permanent human presence, and it's just too uninhabitable. Life does live there, but only
allegedly. Allegedly, it's the only place without a permanent human presence. Allegedly, let's say that. Let's say allegedly.
In the smallest or most particular of ways.
Lost and found. A Navy vet was reunited with his wallet, a wallet that he lost 53 years ago while working in Antarctica.
And so, when we go to explore Antarctica, we're often surprised by what is found there, or what's been left over during past expeditions. And today, we're going to find all kinds of strange stuff. Here now are the 20 strangest things found in Antarctica. Number 20. Ancient continents. I'm going to start off with a pretty weird one here, but I promise it'll make sense in time. One thing that you're going to find all throughout this video is that a lot of people have had to literally dive deep into Antarctica to uncover some of its secrets. Sometimes they do that in a physical way, whether it be by digging or even drilling out ice cores. But another method comes from above via satellites. Satellites have long looked at Antarctica from the atmosphere and used a variety of technology to scan and see what may be underneath the ice and snow. One particularly eye-opening discovery came from a probe that actually went down in 2018, but once its data was recovered and then examined, that's when they found that there were ancient continents known as cratons that were buried under Antarctica's surface. These cratons are actually between the Earth's mantle and crust, and so they can have quite the impact on the ice sheet that Antarctica has become over time, should global warming continue. And let's be honest with ourselves, it's not slowing down anytime soon. This is important because these ancient continents had to get there somehow, and they obviously did not dig or tunnel their way down below the snow and ice. But instead, they were placed there by some kind of event, possibly one of the ones that had helped to shape the Earth from one giant supercontinent to the multiple continents that we have now. And when you think about it, it also explains some of the non-snow and ice stuff that's been found there over the years. There are some more classic terrains in the continent that you may not know about via these cratons that may have actually helped them form. All of this goes to show exactly what you need to explore a place like Antarctica from each and every angle. If we never looked at it from the perspective of a satellite, we may have missed out on things and could have forever missed a piece of ancient puzzle coming into focus. Hopefully this already proves to you that there is far more to Antarctica than it just being a frozen wasteland. Most people don't see it like that, and by the end of the video, you likely won't either.
I think we're just scratching the surface. And I'm not even talking about everything that I presume they're keeping hidden, from the pyramids and the different things like that, the alien activity, you know what I mean? Everything that they found or is there that they know about or that they have a hand in that's going on there, I think we're just scratching the surface on what we're finding out. Yeah, we just need to keep probing and digging, bro. You know what I mean? And it's hard, and they know that. We can't physically go there, spend time there, do things. But, yeah, wait till somebody builds some specific form of technology or robot that allows them to either send it there and go there and do investigations, or allows them to go with it and perform. Like, bro, we're going to start uncovering some things.
Now it's time for the fancy topic. For today's fancy topic, it can be labeled the first ever footage from beyond the ice wall of Antarctica terrified the whole world. It sounds a bit familiar, you may think, but I'm fine with a little bit of deja vu. This story comes via this picture, where an explorer had allegedly gone through Antarctica and came across a massive ice wall. Believe it or not, that's actually possible in a place like this. However, when he was able to get up that ice wall and look over it, he was then found to be the first human in history to see unknown creatures that roamed on the other side. That's when he saw white walkers. You know, as in the George R.R. Martin kind, who actually came up with the White Walker idea, except that this story is going to tell you that he didn't, and that he actually stole it from this explorer, never mind the fact that it's the first time that anyone's ever hearing about it right here and now on this channel. Oh, and that wall in the north? Well, Martin apparently stole that as well. We should all be grateful there's not an undead magic dragon that can bring the wall down that divides Antarctica, because the world would never be the same if they're allowed to roam free. Oh, and also, the final season of Game of Thrones wasn't the best, and the ending sucked. Can you tell that this story's not real yet? As I noted, there is life in Antarctica, but nothing would be locked behind an ice wall or be one to cause a panic. So, we are all safe on that front for now. Now, you can comment down below using the hashtag #FancyTopic and let me know your opinion in relation to what you just saw on the screen. Number 19. Lost Wallet. Now, given the absurdity of the Fancy Topic story that we just did, I'll pivot into something a bit more believable and understandable, and arguably downright relatable. I am talking about a story of a wallet that was returned to its owner over 5 decades after he had lost it.
I had completely forgotten it, that I had lost it.
And yes, he lost that wallet in Antarctica. Talk about a really weird place to leave something behind that's rather important. I'll start from the beginning. The man in question, Paul Grisham, used to be part of the United States Navy, and he was given an assignment to go down to Antarctica alongside some meteorologists and was staged at McMurdo Base. During a 13-month period, he worked and lived there, and when it was time to leave, he accidentally left his wallet behind. Decades later, when the work was being done...
I wouldn't care though. Unless you're returning it with a big wad of cash that I left in it, but I don't carry cash like that, so I probably already knew I didn't have no money in it. It doesn't matter. I mean, you returning it just, takes me down memory lane, but I wouldn't be too thrilled about that. No.
On the base, the wallet itself was then rediscovered. Grisham was 90 years old at that time, and that highlighted just how long it had been since his Navy days. And you want to know what was in the wallet? Well, it contained his Navy ID card, a driver's license, a pocket reference card on what to do during atomic, biological, and chemical attacks, a beer ration punch card, which arguably is the most important, a tax withholding statement, and receipts for money orders that were sent to his wife. So all the typical stuff for a Navy man of the time. I definitely want to know more about that beer ration punch card, though. It's likely that they had to ensure that nobody was drinking too much of their supply.
I was about to say, maybe that's how they knew to say, hey, let me see your punch card. Nah, you had too many. Nope, come back tomorrow. Maybe we need to go back to that. Punch cards and stuff like that. To which, I hear they're at bars nowadays, there's a way for them to keep track. So they keep track of how many a person has, supposed to be, but that's not always the case.
Plot. It should be noted that while this was an official Navy mission, Grisham wasn't exactly thrilled to be going down there. To be honest, I don't blame him on that front. I mean, after all, Antarctica is cold and remote, and he was married and had 2 children at the time, and it couldn't have been easy on any of them. Yet he did his duty for the country, and decades later was given a unique reminder of his time at the bottom of the world. Number 18. The Pyramids of Antarctica. Alright, well, the next one is what you might call a classic story of Antarctica, and not exactly in a way that makes people smile. I talked before about satellites being used to help see Antarctica in a new light, and how that can bring new insight into what's really there. The flip side of that is when things like Google Earth began to get popular, people looked all over the place and saw things that they recognized from an aerial viewpoint and began to wonder if there may be an ancient civilization that had once been on the continent before it froze over. One of the biggest pieces of evidence of this are the newest images of so-called pyramids in Antarctica's snowy tundra. One of them was found in Antarctica's Ellsworth mountain range, and when you look at the picture, you can see why a lot of people may have thought that it was actually a pyramid. It has 4 face sides, and it comes to a point. That's how we define a pyramid in most other parts of the world. especially Egypt, of course. Now, naturally, that led people online, and armchair conspiracy theorists, especially from less credible sites, said that aliens or lost civilizations had made the pyramids and then took off. Except that when you talk to professors who have actually studied stuff like this in the past, for real, you see that the answer is actually a bit more mundane and practical. The image, well, it's just a mountain. In fact, there are mountains in Antarctica, and I told you that this pyramid was above a mountain range, and it was one of those peaks that emerged out of the ice and snow. They're technically known as pyramidal peaked mountains, and while they are rare in the world, they do exist. What throws people off are the 4 flat faces, and even the professors will admit that most mountains only have 1 or 2 of them, but this one had 4. That makes it...
And y'all could be right with this, right? Y'all's theory could be 1000% spot on, but I still want to see more. I want to see more. I want somebody to, just like they're doing the pyramids over here, to do the same thing. Go inside of it, show us, you know what I mean? Make sure there ain't no hidden chambers, all that stuff that you're doing. Just do your due diligence with this one, just to be sure. And if you give any pushback and say, no, we know it's fake 1000%, then now I know you're lying to me. I know you're lying.
It's a unique entity, but it doesn't make it man-made or alien-made. Sorry about that. Number 17. Life on the bottom. Previously, I said that life does exist in Antarctica, and that is 100% true. You can likely name a few of their citizens right now, like penguins or sea lions. However, if you want an even more diverse lineup of creatures, you need only to go to the waters that surround the continent. The beings that live in the ocean surrounding Antarctica count as residents, mainly because they've had to adapt to those frigid temperatures and conditions over the years, and they live quite fine at the end of it all. This can be proven by people like Suzanne Lockhart, who has gone deep into the waters of Antarctica and found over a dozen brand new species of life inside of it. Not what you may have been expecting to hear, but she did find so many types of sea cucumbers that one of them was even named after her, which is kind of sweet and she probably deserves it. Lockhart would tell you that all kinds of things have been found, including one day on a boat when she pulled up a heavy net and found that it was full of massive hairy sponges that looked like vases and were a meter in length. Number 16. Blood Falls. This is another classic story that comes out of Antarctica that many of you may likely be familiar with. The Blood Falls, as they are known, were first discovered and observed by man in 1911 during the Terra Nova expedition, and the man at the helm of the expedition would later name the glacier and the valley after himself. As you can see, the thing that makes the place so special is the fact that the water in this glacial waterfall runs red, which is not how things usually go with waterfalls, and yet there it is. Naturally, it baffled the Terra Nova crew and others who came to observe it over the years. The first explanation was that the water in the glacier was full of red algae, and that was what changed the water to become what it was now. But for the record, that has happened in the past with certain rivers and other bodies of water. But that is not what is happening here. As people would later find out, the water in the glacier has a special element in it, namely iron. And what happens when iron meets oxygen? It creates rust, and so the red color that you see is not the color of blood, it's actually rusty colored water. Number 15. The Hole. Here's yet another example of something being viewed from above, and people freaking out about it because they don't know exactly what it is that they're looking at. It's fair to say that Antarctica has a pretty steady terrain when you go from one place to another. There are not certain dips in the earth that you may see in other continents due to a variety of natural conditions. And yet in the frozen ice and snow, there are certain holes that occasionally pop up, and they can be rather large in scope. They're known as polynias, and while they are rare, they're also a natural part of the continent and the surrounding frozen area. But what exactly are they? Well, the irony here is that it's quite simple. They're just unfrozen areas of water, and some of them happen in massive ice sheets due to the wind and other factors. But some are found in sheets of ice out on the open water, and those are far more curious, as scientists don't exactly know how they formed. Either way, they have happened many times over the years, and so you don't have to freak out about Antarctica falling apart just yet. It may happen eventually if global warming continues, but not right now. Number 14. Plesiosaur. Given how some people look at Australia, you might think that it would be unlikely to find something like a fossil in its ranks, except that that's not true at all. In fact, all manner of fossils have been found both in Antarctica and the islands that surround it. The oldest fossil of the lot was the Plesiosaur, which was a creature that was around 200 million years ago during the Triassic age of history. That alone paints Antarctica that it was a place that was full of life in its waters and indicates that things weren't quite as frigid as they are now.
And it lets us know as well that it will one day again be a place full of life. And that's what, sometimes you think about global warming when they say that. Is it global warming, or is things starting to rotate to where Antarctica will be the place full of life? Just like the pole shifting. Is it that? Is the pole shifting to where this area is going to be cold and now another area is going to be warm? You know what I'm saying? And vice versa. Now Antarctica is going to be warm where another place that was warm is going to be cold. So could that be the case right now? Possibly.
The Plesiosaur is one of the most iconic sea creatures to have ever swam in the prehistoric oceans. It actually was not a dinosaur, but it is said to have lived alongside of them, gliding through the deep like a primeval submarine. It featured a long neck, a sleek body, paddle-like limbs, and a face that could look friendly or terrifying depending on what angle that you caught it from. The neck alone could actually make up half the creature's total length, which would sometimes be over 20 feet. They were, however, a carnivorous marine mammal, feeding mostly on fish, squid-like creatures, and smaller marine reptiles, and some species even had needle-like teeth that would be perfect for catching small prey, while others were apex predators that took down bigger game. In 2011, a fossil of a pregnant plesiosaur was found and showed a large, fully formed baby inside of the mother, so they were actually sea moms that gave live birth and did not lay eggs. The first ever recognized plesiosaur fossil was actually described in the early 19th century by legendary fossil hunter Mary Anning, who discovered the fossil in Lyme Regis, England. Number 13. Reptile Egg. Now we're going to have a look at the egg of a giant ancient creature that used to live in Antarctica. Finding a fossilized egg is something special no matter who you are and where you found it, but when this one was discovered, it took about 10 years to figure out where it had actually come from. It turns out that it was indeed a reptile egg that likely was laid about 68 million years ago. Just as important, it wasn't a land reptile, but a sea one. It helps to paint a much different picture of what life may have been like in Antarctica once upon a time. Number 12. Antarctic Rainforest. Now, there's two words that you likely never expected to hear, but it's true. There was a rainforest found in the snow of Antarctica. The question is, how was it possible? The answer is actually twofold. First, it's in what was found. Roots, spores, and pollen were all found trapped in the frozen continent, and the only way that they could have gotten there was if a forest had grown there once upon a time. There is another element to this, and that would be time itself. This forest wasn't a recent thing or even something that took place in the most recent age, but instead the estimates would point to a time about 90 million years ago when the climate on Antarctica was much, much different. So different, in fact, that it was completely warmer and able to house a lush and green environment. Some felt that it wouldn't have been too much different to what New Zealand or even Wales has right now. It really makes you wonder about everything that lived in Antarctica during the time, and as you've already seen, ancient creatures did exist in the place and left fossils and eggs behind. So there are likely many more to be found should we go looking in the right places. Number 11. Meteorites. Now we'll go from the cold continent to the frozen depths of space. Meteorites are the remains of any meteor that tries to enter the atmosphere, only to be burned up and dispersed a good bit before hitting the ground. Where it hits is vital to both finding the meteorite and trying to get to it before the environment takes over. In the case of Antarctica, it's actually one of the most perfect places to find such a space rock because the cold conditions ensure that it doesn't easily erode. The snow will soften the impact, and it doesn't shatter into a million pieces. That's why
those meteorites explain what we see underwater. That's what I think got a lot to do with it. Because I always, and have been for a while, of the belief that the meteorites, the meteors that come to this planet from space and other planets, I feel like life is on those meteors. And they come here to our planet just like that. You can't tell me otherwise. I'm gonna always believe that.
When you hear about meteorite findings, you will often hear that they came from Antarctica. For proof of this, in 2023, a team went down there and found 5 different meteorites. One of them was actually 7.6 kilos, which is the heaviest that was ever found on the continent. If you want even more context of how many space rocks have been discovered there, it's actually over 45,000. Granted that many of them are quite small, but they do vary in shape and size due to the nature of them crashing into the Earth in the first place. Number 10.
And that's the thing, it's just whether or not the life survives once it get here. If it survives, then it's able to adapt, then it goes on. If it doesn't, then it perishes. That's the way I believe it to be.
The Endurance. Explorations to Antarctica have been complicated, to say the least, over the years. People have established all kinds of bases there, with several nations staking a claim. But imagine trying to go there during the olden days of regular travel. If you didn't have certain things at your disposal, your ship was almost doomed to failure, and there were many doomed ships that went down on the continent. One of the most infamous was Ernest Shackleton's Endurance, a craft that was crushed by ice in 1915 and forced the crew to abandon it. Thankfully, they had enough boats to get away and later on be rescued, but the ship itself actually sank to the bottom of the ocean. 107 years later, it was rediscovered once again, and when cameras examined the craft, they were stunned to see that it was actually in remarkable shape. It's likely because it had been preserved by the frigid waters, and if you look at it, you would have likely guessed it had not been down there for any more than a few years, let alone 107. It was very, very deep into the water, almost 3,000 meters below sea level, which would explain why it took so long to find. Number 9. Lake Vostok. When you hear there's a lake in Antarctica, you might pause for a bit before admitting, yeah, that makes sense with all the snow and ice. You likely think that it's frozen, which also makes sense. However, Lake Vostok is far more than a basic thing. For example, this lake is not one that's actually on the surface, like pretty much every lake that you know about. Instead, it is known as a subglacial lake, which means that it's below the frozen ice sheet that is the surface. And just how far down do you have to go to reach it? Well, only 4 kilometers. That should tell you everything you need to know about how thick that the surface is. And while this kind of thing had been theorized for decades, it would not actually be discovered until 1993, and ever since then, a lot of people have tried to see what else is inside of it. Specifically, all the types of life that likely reside in the waters. Every piece of life could easily change how we perceive the continent, and that's important for scientific research in the end. Number 8. Ice fish colony. I talked about life in Antarctica's waters before, but this next one stands out because of the sheer number of fish that happen to be in one specific space.
Yeah, I've heard about these before. I think they lay a lot of babies, or they come here just to, you know what I mean, lay their eggs, be here. I guess they feel a sense of safety or something here like that. I think, if I'm not mistaken.
It's said that there is one such breeding ground that exists in the cold waters that is so numerous in fish that apparently 60 million of them will come together when the time comes to breed. In fact, that number makes it the largest animal colony in the entire world. The ice fish itself is also a unique fish, not the least of which is because of its transparent body, but also because the ice fish is the only vertebrate to have absolutely no red blood cells. So, once again, life does find a way to survive in a place like Antarctica and its freezing chilly waters. Number 7. Mount Aribbus. Given how cold that Antarctica is, and make no mistake about it, it is cold. However cold you are right now while you're watching the video, or even the coldest you've likely ever felt, is nothing compared to what it's like there. You may actually be surprised to learn that Antarctica does have a volcano known as Mount Aribbus. Just as important is that the volcano is actually active. That means that if it were to erupt, the ice and snow of the continent would be in trouble. Granted, it would not melt the entire continent away, but it could do some damage. In fact, it would be interesting to see just how the lava would react to the frigid temperatures and how long the eruption as a whole would last. Number 6. The Mega Penguin Colony. We all know that penguins are part of Antarctica. It's arguably the most famous part of the entire continent. especially after they did March of the Penguins. I mean, Morgan Freeman doing the narration? Come on. However, what I'm talking about now is something altogether more shocking, that being the fact that in 2018, scientists didn't only find a new penguin colony, which would have been cool in its own right, but they actually found a mega colony.
Swimming pool in the middle. Try swimming for a little wash when you're all...
How big is a mega colony? Well, it makes up about 1.5 million penguins. That's not a random guess either. They would use drone footage to count the pairs that were in the colony, and there were said to be over 750,000 pairs. Naturally, there are many people who want to make this a wildlife reserve, and this is a place that the penguins can be safe from both humanity and climate change. Number 5. Ice singing. You may or may not know that there are often a variety of sounds that can come from a glacier or creatures in the deep that echo all around.
Called the cryosphere.
In Antarctica, there is an ice shelf that is truly special because it plays music at a frequency that humans cannot naturally hear. However, when special equipment is put into place, a hum is caused by the variety of winds and gusts that blow across the ice that can be heard. Equally as important, it is not a random sound. It's actually a constant one that happens at about 5 beats per minute, and that's why many people liken it to singing. Not unlike a natural tune, a variety of instances can change how that sound is emitted. Number 4. Green icebergs. Icebergs are typically one or two colors, either being white or blue, so to hear that one is green can feel odd, not unlike the blood falls that I showed you earlier. So then, what is the explanation for this particular anomaly? Well, it has to do with the very thing that made the blood falls red. More specifically, the icebergs over time get what's known as glacial flour, and that flour covers the icebergs to help them change color. But that iron-rich water turned the blood falls red and not green. Well, yes, that's true, and that's because it was only changing the water's color before, whereas in this time it's turning an entire iceberg a different color, and because of the pure blood coloring of the iceberg, when it's mixed with the yellowish red flour, you then end up with a green iceberg. Number 3. Antarctica's Dry Valleys. Dry is not a word that is usually used to describe Antarctica in any way, shape, or form. Yet there are dry valleys on the continent that directly contradict everything else that's going on around it. These valleys exist in part due to the terrain that surrounds them, and because of the humidity of the area is incredibly low. Add to that, there are strong winds, and that means that any snow that does try to hit the ground is then subsequently blown away before it lands or tries to stick.
This probably is your only chance of survival. If you ever get here and stranded, making it here probably would be my best guess of your chance of survival, maybe being seen or rescued, probably would be in this area. Am I guessing right for those of y'all that are smarter than me? Or is this just even worse? Just let me know.
The irony here is that because of its unique setting, there are things that live there that many have tried to study, and before you say anything, it's typically types of bacteria that are found there. Even still, it goes to show that Antarctica has many different surprises for anyone who looks beyond its frozen fronts. Number 2. Giant Antarctic sea spiders. The giant Antarctic sea spider is indeed a rather rare and big thing, mainly because of the legs that protrude from their small bodies. Despite the name though, they are not true spiders, they just look like nightmare versions of them. They actually belong to their own class of arthropods, and while they do share some traits with arachnids, like multiple legs and jointed bodies, they're more like distant cousins than close siblings. Most sea spiders around the world are rather small, but in Antarctica, they go full kaiju. Some species will grow to over 12 inches across leg to leg. That's not exactly colossal in land terms, but when it comes to underwater, it's absolutely striking. It's a phenomenon known as polar gigantism, a biological mystery where cold and oxygen-rich waters and slower metabolisms allow certain creatures to grow much larger than they do in warmer regions. What makes them even more interesting and freaky to some is that they have an atypical way of laying their eggs. They'll actually lay thousands of them and then stick them directly onto the ocean floor. The reason the eggs are able to survive is because they're covered in algae in order to blend in with the environment.
Bump all that. You said oxygen-rich water causes them to be bigger than they usually are. which means I could possibly find megalodon here. Not meaning I'm going to go look for them, but if I ever wanted to know potential places, this would possibly be one of them. If they could withstand the cold, feel some kind of way to adapt, if they don't already do so or are able to do so, then this is possibly where we could find them.
Number 1. Massive tunnels. The last one may seem impossible, but it has been proven, I assure you. In Antarctica, scans of a variety of spots of ice revealed that there were actually massive tunnels cut directly into the ice sheet of the continent, and those tunnels were as tall as the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France. Not as long as the Eiffel Tower is high, the entrances of the tunnels were as tall as the Eiffel Tower. So how did such a tunnel get made? Despite Antarctica being a frigid place, rivers do actually run through it, and meltwater will seep down, which means that the water cuts through the ice and snow.
Freezing. Why are you doing this?
This is one of the coldest places.
Eventually, that opens up all manner of tunnels for people to go through should they want to. I don't recommend doing that during your next trip though, but, then again, never close the door on adventure.